No, I was gonna say you weren't asked.
I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do my life now. I'm just gonna put it out there.
More than halfway through. I'm pretty sure I did. I'll just, yeah, I mean, the reason I asked you about it, I've been so broad about when I haven't like that yet. Well, I mean, so I had like the 2-minute record on like. I just don't have. I'm not control.
Good afternoon. We're going to start the meeting at 1:40 p.m. Start with roll call. Commissioner Flick, present. Commissioner Jordan,
Present.
Commissioner Sieg,
Here.
Commissioner Stewart,
Present.
Commissioner Wittry.
Eating lunch.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. We'll start with the approval of the meeting minutes from the May 9th meeting. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion, but there needs to be one change in the meeting minutes. Number 4, instead of being absent, I had abstained from number 4 on the meeting minutes. So I just wanted the record to reflect that. And otherwise, with that change, I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Looking for a second.
Second.
There's no discussion. We'll call the question. Meeting minutes approved. Reading of the public hearing rules. The City Planning Commission has established certain rules governing the procedures to be followed at public hearings. Before speaking, each person shall give their name, address, and state whom he or she is representing. Proponents for the proposal will speak first for a period of 10 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents or other interested parties will speak second for a period of 15 minutes. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Proponents will be allowed a period of 6 minutes for rebuttal. Each speaker shall be allowed a maximum of 2 minutes. Opponents will not be allowed to rebut. No material, written matter, photographs, maps, etc., will be accepted by the commission or its staff at any time during this public hearing. This procedure shall be followed except at such time when the presiding officer shall, with the approval of the commission members present, extend such time. Before getting started, I did want to request a motion to reorder the number of the docket items by moving number 9, street name change 001, up to number 2.
Commissioner Witry will make a motion to move number 9 to number 2.
I'll second, or Dejan.
You're good.
15. That's like a real, right? Real, and it's.
Let's vote our machines. Okay, motion to change the order passes. So with that, we're going to start with street name change 00123.
So this is an application that was initiated by council motion to rename a segment of Terpsichore Street for Professor Longhair. It has been withdrawn at the moment to allow for clarity as to what segment of Terpsichore it will affect. So it's not an active application at this point, but we do have public speakers and it has been noticed.
Thank you. So I do have 4 cards. As a reminder, we will not be voting on this matter, but we would like to hear your public opinion. So first is Paul Mayron. I'm sorry. Wrong number. Here I go. Patricia Bird.
Good morning to everyone. Unfortunately, there's been an error when I submitted my request to rename it Terpsichore Street to Professor Longhair Lane. My request was to start at the South Rampart, the 6th District Police Station where my father was rediscovered in 1969 and extend riverbound. Magnolia Street ended up on the notice, but that's not, and I think you all know why. I have tourists come from around the world, everywhere. I wouldn't invite you all for Magnolia Street. I wouldn't go back there, but nevertheless. Sure.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jonathan Hill. I'm a resident of New Orleans. I live at 1111 South Peters. I'm in District B with Leslie Harris. This is my friend Pat Bird. She is the daughter of Professor Longhair. We are here today to support Pat's efforts to get a section of the street of Terpsichore renamed to Professor Longhair Lane. As it's the distance has been incorrect in here, but that'll get clarified. But we want to take this opportunity today to ask you for consideration. Professor Longhair is an iconic musical influence in the city. He's influenced so many people. There are other parks and streets and other memorials to various musicians, but Professor Longhair doesn't have that currently, and we would like to request that name change for the street. Pat lives at 1138.
No.
1738, excuse me, 1738 Terpsichore. Did I miss anything?
No.
Okay, you say whatever you want to say.
No. I it's basically what I've just said. The 6th District plays a major role in my father's legacy. And my father's name was just added to the wall at the warehouse last year, I think on Chapatulas, as one of the musicians that have played there. If it was left up to me, I would name every street in New Orleans Professor Longhair Lane. But nevertheless, I'm asking that you make the correction. Instead of going to Magnolia, it starts at South Rampart in Texaco and extend maybe beyond St. Charles, where tourists, and we are as involved with the tourism department with our music culture. So that's all we're here today. I'll be in touch with my councilwoman, Ms. Harris, and her assistant. Thank you for your time, and you guys have a blessed day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So I assume we'll have a docket on this, perhaps the next meeting.
Yes, it's gonna depend when the revised application is initiated by council motion. It won't be the next meeting, but could be in June or July.
Okay, thank you. Next is zoning docket 2223.
Zoning docket 2223 is a request for a conditional use to permit a standard restaurant Bohemia on the Fred Street mixed-use corridor. The site is located at the intersection of Fred and Upper Line Streets. The Fred neighborhood is within the historic urban neighborhood districts that are regulated by Article 12 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. Article 12, Section 12.2.b.1 requires conditional use approval for any commercial use that exceeds 5,000 square feet. This is to protect the character and scale of development in older parts of the city. The staff reviewed the proposed design and found that it does not meet many of the site and design and building design standards found in Article 12, Table 12.1 and Section 12.3.b. The historical development pattern of the Fred Street mixed-use corridor is what makes Fred a vibrant and walkable neighborhood. The proposed design strategy drastically departs from the character of Fred Street in that the current layout of the structure breaks the rhythm and fabric of the street by not providing building facades at the edge of the sidewalk. The design should hold the corner and frame the intersection of Fred and Upper Line Streets, creating an active pedestrian retail zone on all four sides. The staff has requested that the applicant modify the height, mass, and density of the proposed new infill development to match Fred's neighborhood character, including the following changes: combining the mass of the 6 small buildings into a larger building and shift the building footprint so that the structure is built to the corner of Fred and Upper Line Streets, provide a clearly identifiable entry from the sidewalk at the corner, provide a minimum of 50% transparency along Fred Street, and provide a minimum 12-foot ceiling height for ground floor commercial space. The staff met with the applicant and provided guidance on how to modify the design to bring it more in line with the character of Fred Street and cause it to meet the design requirements of the master plan and zoning ordinance. The applicant submitted revised plans, but the changes do not address the comments. Staff met with the applicant again, and they said they are interested in revising the drawings, but they've run out of time. Because the proposal requires substantial modifications, the staff cannot recommend approval at this time.
Thank you. 2 cards, Chris Young.
Madam Chairperson, members of the commission, Chris Young on behalf of the applicant Together LLC. The developer here is essentially trying to create an outdoor restaurant. And as the developer who is present and can speak if necessary, refers to it as a public park. He is attempting, he and his fellow owners are attempting to create a public park environment with multiple food offerings in the park setting. The applicant and his architects intend to continue to work with the City Planning Commission staff and try to have a meeting of the minds with regard to the design elements that the staff says are necessary, which we do not oppose, and no one opposes them. We just simply ran out of time. Now it's on legal deadline, so it has to go to the next step. So we would ask that the commission consider approving the proposal subject to the provisos that the staff has offered in the recommendations. Either way, if it's approved or denied, we're gonna go to the next step and try to, we commit, and the developers here as well, commit to the staff that we're gonna satisfy their design guideline requests. It's just they ran out of time, and that's kind of simply where we ended up. So either way, they're gonna do that. I don't know how the commission feels, but that's kind of where we are. We just ran out of time. We would normally ask for a deferral, but it's my understanding legally we can't do that.
Can I ask counsel a question? It was my understanding that we can go beyond the deadline if we have a unanimous motion to, we've gone, I don't remember the exact procedure, but we've gone beyond deadline. I guess it's with the consent of the applicant, and if it's unanimous, is there something like that, or am I misremembering?
So I can speak to that. The subdivision regulations explicitly allow the deadline to be extended with the applicant's consent, but because this is a zoning matter and not a subdivision matter, the same regulation doesn't apply here.
Perfect. Very clear. Thank you.
We do consent, though.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Next, I have Billy Blatty. If you would like to say anything, please come up.
How you doing, y'all? I'm Billy Blatty, I represent Together LLC. I don't know if you've seen any of the renderings for this project. It's more or less conceptually, it's a outdoor gathering spot for the neighborhood. It includes a ton of trees, grass pavers, micro environments with swings and hammocks, concrete ping pong tables, a fire pit. Just little areas for people to gather, and 3 separate food concepts in the area as well that spread out. And it's designed more or less not to look industrial, but to look more or less like a park disguising a restaurant concept. I've been working with Haley for a little bit, and you know, I understand completely about keeping within, you know, the corridor and preserving what makes New Orleans special, which is its continuity and homage to its history. And I'm trying to massage a few elements within that so it doesn't become too industrial and skew away from what the intended use and project is, and doesn't gather people, I guess, too much in one narrow scope of the property. It's all supposed to be spread out. It's supposed to be inviting for families, you know, for people who live in the neighborhood, for college students, et cetera. So I'd love to continue to work on this project and with the CPC and get further approval. I think it's going to be a benefit to the area. I think it's something that currently doesn't exist on the, as far as I know, the front corridor. You do not have a park. And basically, I would like you all to take a look at this as a park that happens to have 3 separate food concepts. And you know, our restaurant group is, you know, our intention for the food concepts is to be as incubators for up and coming chefs in the community who currently don't have enough money for their own brick and mortar restaurant yet, but do have a following and a history within some of the top restaurants in the city that they want to branch out and create, you know, their own product and use this as a testing ground. So, you know, in multiple respects as a restaurateur, you know, I'm very passionate about it, and yeah, I'd love for you all to see more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one card in opposition, Ed Pointer.
Good afternoon, Ed Pointer, number 2 Marlboro Gate Place. Our house is catty corner to the back corner of that lot, just off to the right. I moved there 4 years ago specifically to enjoy and support all the restaurants, bars, coffee shops, everything along there. And I do it very well every day, more than enough. I need to tone it down a bit, I think. I and the neighborhood would have no problem and support a well-planned outdoor restaurant coming to that lot. Be nice to have. I'd support that as well. this is not a well-planned restaurant, outdoor restaurant. As the staff has told you, the original plans didn't, accommodate the design requirements of HUMU. When they asked them to come to make revisions, they didn't get them to them till after the deferral and then till the day before that. So had to defer the last meeting. That was a month later after the first one. And now we're here again at the last meeting and they've met with them, I guess, but we don't have any revised plans. They've had plenty of time to look at that. And haven't done it. That's why they're recommended denial. On the other aspect of HUMU requirement is it should be compatible with the nearby residences. I haven't seen any effort on the plans or anywhere else to make it compatible with the nearby residences. And that would include safety and noise issues. Obviously, this is a very large lot. That would be a very large outdoor restaurant impacting neighbors right across Upper Line, catty corner up Marlboro Gate, and behind it on Upper Line, as well as on the other side on Valance. So I would, and as you heard them, the public park concept. I used to live along with public parks. Any of us who have, that raises major issues on its own. Safety issues, security issues. And that's one of the problems we need to figure out for the residential neighbors. And it has not been addressed. Actually, on the revised plans, I saw some movement to trying to address that, but needs to do some other things as well. So I would encourage you to please just deny this. They can appeal it to the city council, and that's fine. Hopefully it doesn't get approved this round unless dramatic changes happen by city council. And they can go back and redesign and try to accommodate the neighborhood who is mostly elderly people and young families with little kids, and they're out on their porches all the time. They're in the yards all the time and go to bed at reasonable hours too, right next door to it. So thank you. Any questions? I'll be glad to answer best I can.
Thank you so much. Mr. Young, you have a moment to rebut, if you'd like.
Thank you. Of course, we would work with Mr. Pointer. I would just point out that we had the MPP meeting and we had overwhelming support from the neighborhood. And we certainly would work with Mr. Pointer and address any of his issues, but the community seems to be in support of this. There were comments that were made and they're reflected in the MPP summary report, but generally the tone was that they were supportive.
Great, thank you. That concludes our public comment portion. Are there any questions for staff
I have a motion.
or a motion?
So I move for denial in accordance with staff recommendation. I'm not comfortable that staff recommended denial, and there's been ample opportunity. And if we had time, I'd move for deferral, but we don't. So I'm not comfortable just approving on a promise and sending it to the city council. So the city council will be able to decide if the modifications are good. But at our level, I haven't seen anything to suggest that we should approve, so I move for denial.
I will second. I just think it's too overbuilt for the lot. I'm definitely in pro-commerce and I'd love to see these vacant lots get activated. But I definitely am not comfortable with the design currently as it's been presented to us.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? No, okay. We'll call the question. Motion to not to deny is approved. Thank you. Next is zoning docket 3623.
Zoning docket 3623 is a request for conditional use to permit a hotel in an HUB1 historic urban neighborhood business district, with a part of the rear yard of the property split zoned into the adjacent HURM1 historic urban multifamily residential district. Originally, the applicant also requested to have live entertainment as a secondary use, but withdrew that request since first submitting the application. The applicants propose to redevelop a vacant apartment complex into a hotel to support the programs of the adjacent Dew Drop Inn. The proposed hotel is not permitted in the HUB1 or HURM1 zoning districts. However, the site is also in the LAS LaSalle Street Overlay District, the provisions of which take precedence over the site's HUB1 zoning classification and where a hotel is permitted as a conditional use. The proposal is consistent with the intention of the LaSalle Street Overlay District, which is to create an environment with additional opportunities for live entertainment at commercially zoned sites along commercial corridors, as well as at small sites with commercial zoning that are interspersed within the neighborhoods where arts and culture uses have historically existed. Therefore, the staff recommends approval of zoning docket 3623, subject to 3 provisos.
Thank you. I have one card, Curtis Doucette.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me.
You state your address for me, please.
Yep, Curtis Doucette. I am at 1718 St. Anne Street, Suite 100.
Thank you so much.
All right. This project, we believe, is worthy of approval on its own merit. Certainly agree with the staff's recommendation and appreciate that legwork to demonstrate that. Considering its proximity to the Dew Drop Inn, we think that this is the best use. The Dew Drop Inn will be a very active site, and so it's better, I think, to have a hotel rather than an apartment complex with long-term residents. But I also want to speak to this from the perspective of the Dew Drop Inn as also the developer of the Dew Drop Inn. This is a big part of what will make the Dew Drop Inn successful. Right now, we have several dilapidated properties around the Dew Drop Inn that attract crime and drug use on site. We even had some on this particular site before we cleaned it up. And so if the Dew Drop is going to be successful and viable, we have to make sure that the rest of the neighborhood comes along with it. So from that perspective, it's helpful to the Dew Drop Inn project. As well, the Dew Drop Inn is a very small hotel, 17 rooms. And that is very difficult to manage, very difficult to achieve the economies of scale that are necessary for a hotel to be financially viable long-term. This helps with that. And although I want to be clear about this, 2 separate businesses with 2 separate ownership structures, I do share an identity of interest in both projects. And there's an opportunity for us to share some resources between the 2. And so long-term, we think that it'll be very helpful for the project. I think it's also a part of redeveloping this corridor to make it something that's attractive to tourists and locals alike. And thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? That's the only card that I have. Questions for the staff or a motion?
I'll make.
I'll make a motion approval with 3 provisos, subject to 3 provisos.
A second.
Commissioner Witchery made a motion for approvals, seconded by Commissioner Jordan. If there's no discussion, we'll call the question. Motion passes. Best of luck. Next up is zoning docket 3723.
Zoning docket 3723 is a request to renovate a former gas station in Algiers to a mini warehouse or storage facility. So the proposed site plan has several design deficiencies, which are outlined in the report. Most notably, the overall suburban design of the site, which is not in line with the historic urban design of this neighborhood. These deficiencies must be met before staff can move forward with a recommendation. The applicant has been made aware and are currently working on site modifications. Therefore, staff recommends deferral of this request to the June 27th, 2023 CPC hearing.
Thank you. I have no cards. Looking for a motion for deferral to June 27th.
I'll make a motion for deferral.
Commissioner Stewart seconds. If there's no discussion, we'll call the question. Start on machines. Motion to defer passes. Next zoning docket 3823.
Zoning docket 3823 is a request for conditional use to permit a distillery with a bar and live entertainment as a secondary use over 10,000 square feet in floor area in an HMC2 historic Marigny Treme Bywater Commercial District and an historic urban corridor use restriction overlay district. The site is the old Frankie and Johnny's Furniture Store on St. Claude Avenue. The proposal does not violate any standards of the CZO and is consistent with the master plan. The existing CZO use standards for the proposed uses and the provisos recommended by the staff are intended to mitigate or prevent any adverse impacts that could possibly result from the proposed uses. The staff has recommended approval subject to 10 provisos. However, the applicant has requested a deferral to the June 27th CPC meeting.
Thank you. I have one card for Paul Kramer. If you wanted to say anything.
Good afternoon, Paul Kramer, 2244 Killdeer Street. Thanks for letting me speak today. I'm not going to be able to come to the meeting at which this would be deferred. I am not being paid to or representing any party today. I'm speaking only for myself. And I'm in favor of this project. I was a longtime Bywater resident and very familiar with St. Claude Avenue. The City Planning Commission even studied this corridor as part of the Main Street Resilience Plan. Much of St. Claude Avenue is currently in a sad shape. It is several miles long with many vacant buildings and lots, but revitalization is happening slowly going downriver from the French Quarter. You see more restored historic buildings, lively arts and cultural businesses, uses attractive to fun-loving New Orleanians and visitors alike. Things get a little rougher as you get downriver towards Bywater. This distillery proposal is really fantastic because it could serve as an anchor at a busy intersection that also contains a gas station and a McDonald's. But having this business occupy such a large structure will go a long way to revitalizing this part of St. Claude Avenue. And having a business that makes a product is also a good thing. So many alcoholic beverages are consumed in New Orleans. It should be beneficial economic development for the community to actually produce the spirits here and hopefully to export them as well. I see in your packet that even the Faubourg Marigny Neighborhood Association is in favor of this conditional use. So in conclusion, please support the revitalization of St. Claude Avenue and recommend approval of the distillery conditional use.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. So we're looking for a deferral for June 27th. Okay, looking for a deferral for June 27th, please.
I'll move for deferral till June 27th meeting.
Looking for a second for deferral. Thank you. Commissioner Stewart, second. There's no discussion. We'll call the question.
Is there a reason that, sorry,
The client has requested a deferral, correct?
is there a reason the client asked for deferral? I've read all the provisos. I was wondering if there's something in the provisos that they.
The applicant did not state the reason why they wanted the deferral. I can't speculate on why they wanted it.
Okay.
But they're all, I did told them about, when I sent them a copy, the advanced copy of the report, the same time you guys got yours. A couple of days later, he did in fact call and say, or email and say that he wanted a deferral. Or their agent did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to defer passes. Zoning docket 3923.
Zoning docket 3923 is the request for a conditional use to permit a hotel in an HMMU historic Marigny Treme Bywater mixed use district. The applicant proposes a hotel on the second floor of a two-story building resulting from the repurpose of the existing commercial office space. There was a 20-space off-street parking lot proposed as well. The proposed hotel includes 5 guest suites, each containing 1, 2, or 4 bedrooms for a total of 13 bedrooms. Plans for the ground level have not been established or are not part of this application. The HMMU district in which the site is located is an intensive historic core commercial district, which allows for a variety of commercial, light industrial, and residential uses. The district is often applied to old industrial areas located within otherwise historic core residential neighborhoods and often developed into warehouse buildings. This zoning is intended for higher intensity uses and for allowing the reuse of those vacant industrial buildings. And while hotels are generally not permitted in the historic core non-residential neighborhoods, they are allowed as a conditional use in the HMMU districts. The purpose of this designation is to allow for such development as long as it is deemed compatible with the historic nature of the surrounding development. The current use of the building as office space is probably less impactful than most uses allowed by right in this property, and due to the nature of a hotel and its associated activities, there will be a slight negative impact on traffic and noise compared to the existing use of the property. However, those impacts may not be greater than others uses allowed in the district as permitted or under conditional use. The applicant is providing ample parking to mitigate the impact of parking on adjacent properties, and there is no outdoor recreational space proposed with the request. For these reasons, and because the mixed-use historic core neighborhood land use designation speaks to the goal of increasing convenience for visitors in the utilization of historic non-residential structures to increase density without precluding hotels, staff believes the request is not in conflict with the master plan and recommends approval of the request subject to 3 provisos.
Thank you. Paul Marone. And I have Gerard Ward ceding time to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Paul Marone on behalf of Bywater JEJ LLC, which is the owner of the property. As you've seen from your staff report, the property is located at 901 Bartholomew Street in the Bywater at the corner of Burgundy and Bywater. This existing building that you see was the past home of the 5th District Fire Station. The building contains about 14,000 square feet, and as your staff noted, we're requesting a conditional use just for the 2nd floor. The 1st floor will be utilized with permitted uses under the property's existing zoning. So again, with only the 2nd floor being subject to the request this afternoon, we're proposing 5 boutique hotel units. That would be 1 bedroom, 2 2-bedrooms, and 2 4-bedrooms. It is our belief that that the historic use of the property, being the 5th District Station, was far more impactful than what we're proposing with these 5 units. And that we think it's a good fit for the area, given some of the surrounding uses and the general character of this portion of the Bywater. In meeting with some of the residents, we understand there's some concerns. I'd just like to touch on those very briefly. One was about parking and traffic, or the increase of traffic in the area. As your staff report notes, we have ample parking on site to take care of that. I would respectfully suggest that the traffic generated by this 14,000 square foot building in its historic use would be much greater than what we're proposing with just these 5 units on the 2nd floor. There was a question about the operation of the boutique hotel. Bywater JEJ LLC will be the holder of the conditional use permit if it is granted. They are the owners of the property and they will maintain control. They will contract with the certified third-party management company to handle the day-to-day operations, but the owner and its members will continue to be involved in the property. There was a question about the renovations to the building. There are very limited exterior renovations. There will be perhaps a repainting. There will be some additional landscaping brought in to help beautify the area, but the vast majority of all the renovations will be interior. We expect that process to take between 8 to 12 months once we actually receive the permit and start that work. In conclusion, we believe that this is a relatively benign use, but a compatible use with the area. We believe that it complements the area and that it is a good fit for this part of the Bywater. So with those statements and with the staff's recommendation, we respectfully request your consideration and approval this afternoon. We thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have a question. You'll be updating the plans to comply with the lobby regulations, correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant? So, Mr. Marion, you could.
Could you just remind me how many parking spaces there are again?
The parking spaces we're providing, I believe they're 20 spaces.
And that's currently behind.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
What happens on the first floor of this building?
So at this point, we do not have specific tenants or uses for the first floor. We anticipate that there may be restaurant use, office use, but we are content with the permitted uses under our zoning, and we will make sure that those uses that do occur on the bottom floor are compatible and consistent with the permitted uses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question with regard to parking.
Yes, ma'am.
So if you had a restaurant on the first floor, how would that factor into the parking or the amount of parking available?
Well, that would depend on what those uses are. Again, we've got 20 spaces there. We would have some on-street parking as well, most likely. But we would have to work out those ratios depending on how those spaces end up being utilized as we come through to permit those.
Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you. I have 3 cards in opposition. Eleanor Graham, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Eleanor Graham, and I am not here in my capacity as an attorney.
Could you state your address, please?
Yes, 900 Bartholomew Street, condo unit 408. I live in the Saxony condominium building directly across from the front of this proposed hotel, where Mr. Ward currently has a management company on the first floor. I am a condominium owner, and my husband, in fact, own 2 condominiums at the Saxony Hotel. I am joined here today by 2 other opponents of this project for a variety of reasons. Number 1, I can convey to you as somebody who worked significantly in the zoning area as a deputy city attorney for the city of New Orleans in the 90s, and have followed what this commission has done and the council have done in the Bywater with shock. I can also confirm to you as a former uptowner who resides in the Bywater and is embedded deeply in the neighborhood association and has started an artistic salon in that neighborhood, that this is not, while superficially in compliance with the use of a former industrial building, otherwise in compliance with this historic district. You need to think about before you recommend approval and vote and recommend any other provisos for this project as to what you do not have as opposed to what you have. Across the street, you have a condominium building that is not appropriately regulated for short-term rental. In December 2019, you proposed and in fact passed short-term regulations that would have limited our condominium building to 17 short-term rental permits. That has not happened. If you check with the Department of Safety and Permits, you'll find directly across the street in my condominium building, there are well over 35 now short-term rental in that building. All right. So what do you have over here? You have something that is built for long-term or residential plan, correct? Look at those. Those are apartments. They have kitchens. They could have been condominiums. When I moved into the Saxony, we were told those were proposed for condominium use, and that's the layout. What are they going to become as a hotel? As a boutique hotel, that could mean nightly rental. Nightly rental. What that's going to mean, whether you have parking or not, is also a proposed use for the first level. So what you don't have is what might happen if you give them that permit, you don't know what else you're going to approve for the first level with an adverse impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Ms. Graham, apologies. Next is Peter Murphy.
Oh, good afternoon. Thank you for hearing me. My name's Peter Murphy. I also live in 900 Bartholomew Street, apartment 508. So I wanted to, in essence, echo what Eleanor had said about the concerns. In essence, what I live in right now is an STR hotel. It's unmanaged. I've experienced certain risks or shortcomings because of that unmanaged environment. And I don't expect anything different to occur in the building across the street. I expect for it to eventually be just another low-managed STR hotel. My experiences in my building would only give me the experiences what I would expect for another development by the same person, and that's what I expect. And it would be a detriment to the neighborhood already, and a detriment to the people that live across the street that are already burdened by living in essence in an STR hotel. So I would ask you to really consider giving this approval. Thank you.
Thank you. One more card, Linda Murphy.
Hi, I'm Linda Bothell Murphy. I'm Linda Bothell Murphy, also 900 Bartholomew, apartment 508. My concern is security. We live across the street in the Saxony condominium. And to date, there is absolutely no security in my building. There is no one from the managed company on a regular basis that manages the STRs. After the Hurricane Ida, no one walked around to see how we were. All the garage doors, the gates were open because of various reasons. So there's absolute free accessibility to my building, or our building, excuse me. And I think that before we even, I request that even before you consider approving that project, that you address the concerns of the Saxony and the security of the neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, before there's rebuttal, the first speaker in opposition's name was Graham. Yeah, so Ms. Graham, I want to ask you to follow up just on one comment that you made, which was the comment at the end about the uses on the first floor.
Yes, be mindful of this, okay? What you don't see in this picture is cottages all around. And on the first floor, once they get the boutique hotel permit and they meet minimum lobby requirements, you could in effect have what you have in the CBD, which is contraindicated for a residential neighborhood. Remember, this is residential neighborhood. This might have been the police station after Katrina, right? But it's been an office building, and it was the Fry office building for decades. That's all it was. That's the old Fry office building, all right? So the reality for us is we're going to experience, no matter what, intense use from hotel occupants and the fact that they are not residents of the neighborhood. And these are not going to be sold as condominiums or rented appropriately for residential use.
But on the first
So on
floor,
the first floor, yeah, what you have on the first floor is Mr. Ward, and listen, I don't have anything against Mr. Ward. He's a businessman. I want him to succeed. I'm just opposed to what is proposed here. He has his office in the back. The front is a little area where it's become a catch-all for storage. And at one point, there was something proposed, maybe a coffee shop, for which they never got a building permit on the first level to the right. Now there is nothing to the right where they propose to have the stairwell up to the second level with presumably a small lobby. Look at the plans closely. There's not room for a real lobby. All right. They're not really arguably, he doesn't have your architect. He doesn't have the contractor. And he's not telling you who the third party is going to be to represent this. If the third party is going to be one of the short-term or the top short-term rental company in my building, you're going to see minimum oversight.
ma'am,
And on the, yeah,
my question is,
Yeah.
We're not trying to reopen the
the debate.
entire
Okay.
opposition. So my question is about the first floor. If the first floor is going to be, if they haven't asked for, so there wouldn't be any kind of zoning concession on the first floor, it would have to be a permitted use, whatever the permitted uses are. So if the permitted uses, if it's a permitted use now, it could happen regardless of what's
Yes.
on the second floor. So I'm trying to ask what your opposition is about the first floor.
Okay. Well, I don't have an opposition because the first floor is not proposed. I said you need to be skeptical where you see an entire building where only part of the building is proposed for development. And you don't have your contractor, you don't have your operator identified, okay? The problem here is you have a first floor that is really, look at this building. Everything around it is residential, and across from it are vacation homes. 7 vacation homes were built that provide a loud nuisance environment in addition to the short-term in our building. So you are putting pressure on what are otherwise cottages and an dense, classic old residential environment backed up to the Maison Inn. Okay, a classic B&B.
So
What's going to happen is you're going to have an
answer.
intense, you're going to have.
Thank you.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
First
so
floor
that's
could be a
good though.
bar.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay,
Murphy.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. If you get the hotel, you can. get the bar.
Mr. Marone, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you. Just briefly, I would suggest to you that there's nothing to be skeptical about the uses on the first floor when we don't come to you asking for any variances, any conditional use permits, or anything other than what is already going to be permitted there. There is simply a matter of trying to establish if we're going to have this conditional use permit on the second floor, that will give us a build out period at which time we can then pursue the leasing of the space on the first floor, but nothing at all to be skeptical of. I would also suggest to you that some of the complaints that you're hearing this afternoon really are not based on our application for the conditional use. There are complaints about the Saxony and security at the Saxony and problems that are perceived to be at the Saxony, which respectfully are not part of this application. What you have before you is an existing 14,000 square foot building. We are asking for a use that is not prohibited. It is permitted with a conditional use permit. We're asking for that permit for five units, boutique hotel units. That is not only far less impactful than the use that was historic as in the fire station, but if the police station, but if we developed out this entire use, and I believe your staff report reflects this entire building with just permitted uses, it is highly likely that those uses that are already permitted would have a greater impact on the neighborhood than taking the entire second floor and creating 5 hotel units. So with all that being said, I would simply ask for your consideration this afternoon. I would ask that you consider the staff's positive recommendation and that you grant the approval of our conditional use permit as submitted, subject to the provisos in the staff report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I'm just looking at the floor plan and wondering where you would locate a lobby. And how large would the lobby be?
So as you come in the front door, it would be to the right. I'm looking at my client to make sure I give you good information. To the right of the front door. Yes. So as you come in the front door, the lobby would be located to the right.
And will a person be stationed there? Who is going to be there? How is the check-in happen or?
Yes.
What is the process?
24-hour staff as you would in a typical or standard hotel facility.
Do you have branding developed for this hotel or are you developing, like, how are you going to advertise for this hotel to be occupied?
Yeah, so there'll be a marketing plan that'll be put together by the management company that will be used to market the hotel and the occupancies that are available by it.
So someone can go onto hotels.com or booking online for hotels and purchase a hotel room for this particular hotel?
I cannot say for certain that hotels.com would be used,
No, I'm
but
just
that
saying
type of
something.
platform, yes, I would expect that type of platform to be used as part of the marketing. Yes.
I'm just looking at the floor plan. It's not typical to have a complete kitchen in a hotel room. I
Mhm.
mean, I know it's a great amenity, but it's not is there a reason why you decided to have a complete full kitchen in a hotel room?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, with the change in the market, with the short-term rentals that are out there, to be competitive in capturing some of that market, the trends, we believe we need to have that so that we can attract the customer base. That we believe there's enough that users that are interested in having that component, so they are not going to your traditional hotels where they don't offer that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand if it's a hotel residence or a hotel room, so because of the nature of the floor plan that's being proposed. I would have liked to see a floor plan of the first floor, like clearly delineating a lobby and clearly showing like some sort of proposed retail or, some sort of use to kind of give everybody a clear understanding of the whole project.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
Just some context. So you were the developer of the Saxony,
Correct.
and so you've purchased the property across the street, and that is the proposal for the hotel.
Correct.
And in the condo docs as the Saxony, it was marketed as short-term rentals, correct? That could be allowed there?
Yes, the condo docs permitted short-term rentals. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff or a motion?
Question for staff.
Just what are some the distinctions between hotel and a short-term rental, commercial short-term rental? They require a lobby with 24-hour staffing, correct? And yeah, that's probably the most significant. Anything else?
No, I mean, that's really it. I think when you think about hotels generally, there is an expectation that there will be a lobby. There's an expectation that there may be a hotel bar or restaurant or the like, but the idea is that it's a full service type of establishment that is very, relatively highly staffed. And that's in contrast to STRs, which are mostly minimally staffed and don't have that on-site presence.
Okay, and one other question. So when you request a conditional use, you can request a conditional use. Apparently this I did not know, for a part of a building.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty common. You'll often find a strip mall, and this is essentially a vertical version of a strip mall. So you've got the downstairs unit that is by right, and then you have a separate unit that would get conditional use approval.
Okay.
That would apply only to that upstairs unit.
Okay.
If I could ask a clarifying question regarding STRs, how does that apply to a condo type building? Is it limited by percentages? Was there anything, I just don't recall if there's anything identified in that as part of the residential STR?
So, I mean, this is a district that allows for commercial STRs by right. And so if I'm understanding the question correctly, essentially, because it allows for long-term rental, allows for short-term rental, the condo docs, can essentially present either of those options to the potential condo buyers.
So they're not limited to the residential STR, they're by right, commercial STR,
That's correct.
and it could only be changed if changed in some condo bylaws by majority, however they do that.
Sure, the city rules are what they are, and the condo can decide to supplement that however they choose.
Great, thank you.
This is just a tough block because you've got the Saxony, you've got the two commercial rentals over on the corner. You've got this building that's, been vacant for a long time. You have these wonderful cottages right across the street. And then you have a handful of cottages running to the river. So you definitely want to see this building activated because otherwise it's just been sitting. It's currently not occupied, correct? And how long has it been sitting vacant? I mean, I remember when it was the police station right after Katrina for the hub station.
Really, since the police moved out, there were two young ladies that bought it and lived there.
Right, Shay.
Shay and Cam, and then I bought it from Shay and Cam.
I
So, Shay and Cam lived there after the police moved out.
Mhm.
Any other questions or a motion?
I hate to keep going back to the floor plan, but I mean, each of these units are, 3 and 4 bedroom units or larger units, and that's why I'm questioning the hotel room versus hotel residence concept. And I'm asking the staff if that was something that you considered.
Hotels can take many forms. You'll often find extended stay hotels that do have kitchens. So that is not a distinction that we typically make. We understand that, hotels, floor plans and amenities will flex with the market. And so generally when a hotel, a conditional use, of course, is a process that allows you to make those sort of more fine-grained assessments, but at the staff level, we do not typically say hold, a certain type of hotel that to a different standard than we would an extended stay hotel. We would view those as being comparable.
So go, but I'm gonna ask maybe our engineer. The stormwater management on this block is really tough. And so since this is an existing building, how does that actually play into the redevelopment of that? Because I am concerned about the impact water gathers here.
Right, so the stormwater management requirements are in the building code. They're triggered generally for an existing condition like this based on the scope of work. So is it substantial improvement? Is the renovation constitute substantial improvement? In which case it would have to be brought into compliance with the building code requirements, which are generally about storing the first inch and a half of stormwater that hits the site. All of that is to say that I don't know if this is gonna trigger the stormwater requirement or not, because we don't know whether this will be considered substantial renovation when it goes through construction.
Thank you.
Any further questions or a motion?
Yes, one more. What is the reason why you do not have the first floor planned out? You may have said this, but sorry, please repeat it if you did.
We simply haven't marketed the first floor and tried to pursue active tenants yet. We hope to be able to identify clearly what we're doing on the second floor before we do that.
It's not a concern about triggering like stormwater management regulations or anything like that. I am concerned
No,
that this would be vacant, that it would remain vacant.
The tenant
And,
mix on the bottom floor, that doesn't that has not been a concern, that the tenant mix would trigger the stormwater requirement. However, triggering the stormwater requirement is a consideration, and it's something that we're interested in, but we don't believe that it's likely that the tenant mix, whether it's a coffee shop or an office or something along those lines, would likely trigger that, but we'll be mindful of that.
All right, thank you.
Do you have any other plans for the building?
I'm making a motion to defer this docket until we receive plans for the first floor building delineating the lobby clearly and access from the street, and how the lobby will service the second floor hotel and how people will be directed. I think it's a very important part of this piece. Otherwise, I'm okay with, the staff. I'm satisfied with the staff answers, your answers with the general layout of the hotel, but I'd really like to see how the first floor is delineated. So I'm making a motion to defer this to the next meeting.
Are we on deadline? No, okay,
No, the deadline is July 22nd.
thank you.
I'm gonna second, but I'd like to add that too, is just to be able to try to work with the neighbors. Your neighbors are your biggest assets as well. And so I'd like to be able to include that in the motion. This is a really compact block, you know that, and there's just some storm management concerns, and that fabric of the block is an interesting one in New Orleans, to be able to have the condos, the cottages, as well as the commercial, and then the short-term rentals on the corner. You have an opportunity to lead here, and we'd like to be able to see it with your development.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll vote on machines.
Well, quickly, I don't think we got a deferral date.
Oh.
So we'll say that the next meeting is June 13th. To meet that, we would need updated plans at staff level by June 5th at the absolute latest. So if that's doable on the applicant side, that would work at the staff level. Alternatively, it could be 2 weeks after that.
Mr. Mayron, is that acceptable? June 13th? June 13th is good. Okay, so defer until June 13th.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure if he actually heard it. It has to be in by June 5th for the 13th. For that meeting.
It's good. June 5th to receive drawings from city planning or to city planning. So you'll receive updated plans June 5th for submission of the docket item to be deferred to June 13th. Okay, let's vote on machines. Motion to defer passes. Zoning docket 4023.
Zoning docket 4023 is a request for a conditional use to permit a car wash in an MU1 medium intensity mixed use district, an HUC historic urban corridor use restriction overlay district, and an EC enhancement corridor design overlay district. The subject site includes 16 lots bounded by South Carrollton Avenue, Tulane Avenue, and Ulloa Street. The applicant is proposing a single development site measuring approximately 1.3 acres with a primary ingress on Tulane Avenue and a secondary ingress on South Carrollton Avenue. The site is currently developed with 3 vacant buildings, including 2 along Tulane Avenue and 1 fronting Ulloa Street. These buildings were historically part of a diverse business corridor along Tulane Avenue that provided an array of goods and services, including offices, retail, hotels, restaurants, furniture warehouses, and rug sales. The applicant plans to demolish all 3 buildings in order to construct a driveway and 4 parking spaces for a proposed car wash. The car wash tunnel facility would be located on the corner of South Carrollton and Ulloa, with the remainder of the site to be used for parking, vacuum bays, and traffic circulation. Staff reviewed this proposal in the context of the city's master plan, which designates the site's future land use as mixed-use medium density, and also the enhancement corridor design overlay district. The cumulative goal here is to promote a compact, transit-oriented, and pedestrian scale environment with appropriate transitions between high-intensity uses and low-intensity uses. In assessing compliance with the overlay district standards, as well as the conditional use approval standards, staff found the project was non-compliant with 4 of the 5 criteria for each. Ultimately, staff found that the autocentric nature of the use, which would require large curb cuts, large swaths of impervious surfaces, and the disruption of an increasingly rare pedestrian scale streetscape along this major transit corridor, was incompatible with both the overlay district standards and the future land use designations. The effect of this proposal would be especially pronounced along Tulane Avenue, where in recent years there have been notable adaptive reuse projects and state-led efforts to reduce auto traffic in order to promote a healthy pedestrian environment. While the CZO gives applicants the opportunity to mitigate less compatible uses via design standards, staff believes that the use of a car wash itself is contrary to the intent of the master plan and overlay standards in this particular location, and the effects cannot be fully mitigated. For these reasons, staff recommends denial of zoning docket 4022.
Thank you. I have a few cards. First up is Missy Quigley.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Missy Quigley, Sherman Strategies, 800 Barone. It's nice to see all of you. I wanted to first thank Brennan for his thoughtful report and for speaking with me about explaining the issues that came in with the report. I'm sad that the first time I come before you is the time that I have to disagree with the staff. I'm not really disagreeing with the staff. They have to read the black and white code. You get to see the color outside of it. And I know that the master plan considers this corner to be a pedestrian friendly corridor. It doesn't look like Magazine Street to me. It doesn't look like where people are walking, shopping, talking to each other, drinking coffee. It's across the street from a Chick-fil-A, which also you approved recently. We understand that the master plan wants this to be a walkable corridor, but I think when you go out there and you look at the reality, maybe the master plan needs updating because that's not what's happening out there. Take 5 is a company with local roots. It was started here in the New Orleans area. We had an NPP meeting and we also attended the Mid-City Neighborhood Organization meeting. We did not have any opposition to this use. The main considerations were crime, and we totally get that. We think that these are blighted buildings that the mayor went on a walking tour and pointed out as some of the most blighted buildings in New Orleans. We're going to tear those down. We're going to put it back into commerce. We listen to the neighbors. We're not going to have anything that invites people to come onto the site. We're going to have a fence. It's going to lock at night. We're going to have extra security. We're going to have extra lights. And we're going to do everything we can to mitigate the concerns of the neighbors, which is crime, not this use. We went through the staff report and we've upgraded a few things that were mentioned. We've upgraded the landscaping to meet the CZO by adding more islands in the parking area. We've amended the site plan to provide a 20-foot rear yard setback so that we would not have to have a variance. We've added bike racks for the employees in case they would want to bike to work. This is only a conditional use because of the overlay in the underlying zoning district. It's a use by right. We thank you for your time and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you.
I have a question, just quickly. You said you were going to tear down buildings?
The Are there pictures of those?
Yeah.
I think there was, and they're buildings fronting Tulane. They were part of the mayor's blight tour. They're blighted buildings that are, I don't think that they're able to, I don't know if you can.
Looks like there's only maybe 2 buildings on the said
It's in
property.
the packet. We just pull it up. Thank you.
Those two.
The old furniture store?
Yeah, it's the one on the
That's
right.
close. Fun fact, I worked in that building
Really? That is a fun fact.
when I was doing union organizing work as a young child. Yes.
I wanted to note that it is a conditional use in both the underlying zoning and the overlay.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Missy. Chris Davis.
Good afternoon. Chris Davis, 5823 Chapatula Street, here on behalf of the developer. I just want to say, as a lifelong resident of New Orleans, I'd be really excited for the opportunity to put this property back into commerce. I don't remember any time in my life at which the property on Carrollton was developed, and if it was, I don't remember anything since Katrina. We really want to do what's best for the neighborhood. That's why we met with them. We really didn't see any pushback. Our use is consistent with the businesses around. Just east of the site, there's a gas station. Across the street, there's a Gerber collision shop. It is an underserved community from an express car wash standpoint. So, we think that it would be ultimately good for the services there, and we are open to any suggestions to make it more walkable, including adding a dog wash station, bike wash area in the area along Tulane Avenue there, as well as any other possible recommendations to make it more walkable. We even met with the neighborhood and suggested putting in a dog park or something, a bike, an area for the bus pickup, but they really didn't want that out of concerns for, congregating in the evening, drug use, crime, things like that. So we are going with the plan as is out of respect for their requests. Happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's the closest car wash from this location?
So the closest is Rich's on Earhart, and that's really the only other express car wash in that area. And that's the one I go to. I have to go over there right now. There's one that's not a conveyor behind the Speedy on Carrollton, but I would say it's of a much lower quality if you've been there. So this would really be the only one in that area, to service, 70,000 people that drive by a day, and, the very dense neighborhood there. So, it from an express car wash standpoint, it's a very underserved community.
And how would the cars, just because my eyesight is not as great as it was, can you just walk me through how the cars would actually, because I know Chick-fil-A, I mean, there's a lot of traffic going on, a block up. And so this is always a tough, when you're going down Tulane to try to turn, it's a very difficult turn and you have to go down several blocks. So walk me through that.
Yeah, so I mean, unfortunately, our traffic is not quite what Chick-fil-A's is. It would be great if we had those kind of volumes. But so you have the stacking at the rear right there. We'll have 3 pay stations. And then you drive into there. I mean, we should have ample stacking there for the volumes that we do. It's a relatively smooth demand curve throughout the day, a little peaking in the middle of the day when people aren't getting lunch, running errands. So the quick turn ins would be on both Carrollton and Tulane, an entrance and exit there. And then you would go to the right kind of there. I guess that would be to the south and enter the tunnel and exit towards Carrollton Avenue.
How many people do you plan to employ?
So the staffing for our car washes is typically 2 to 6 employees at a time per, depending on how busy of a wash is. We anticipate this one being a busier wash. And that would be, about 2 shifts a day. We're open 7 days a week. Probably 12 times 7, well, 15, 20 people. depending on the volume.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joseph Ori.
Good afternoon. I'm here on behalf of the engineering firm that's helping to design this. And just speaking about the site plan, just want to note, it's probably on me, we didn't get our updated site plan in time to be, so that you see, but our updated site plan has incorporated all of the comments from the neighborhood associations. What you don't see is we added an attendant booth that would be a deterrent for crime, gates that could be locked at night to limit traffic on site the site. Also from a walkable corridor perspective, we tried to get this building on the zero lot lines of either Carrollton or Tulane to try and increase the walkability. This is the best that we could make the building fit onto the site. We wouldn't be adding 2 new curb cuts, so the curb cut on Carrollton is existing that we would continue to use. There's actually another curb cut on Carrollton that we would close up and not have in use. And the curb cut on Tulane would be proposed. Also with the site, we're trying to keep the building on the outside to give the neighbors, and we're complying with all of the landscaping, of course. And we're trying to keep the vacuums and kind of the guts, the queuing and all that on the internal of the site to limit any impacts on the neighbors visually or otherwise. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Those are all the clerks that I have. Are there any questions for staff or a motion?
Just to move us along, I'm gonna move for denial in accordance with staff recommendation based on what staff said.
Commissioner Sieg made a motion for denial. Is there a second? Commissioner Sieg, would you like to revise your motion?
I will draw my motion.
Can I make a motion? I would like to make a motion to approve zoning docket 040-23, subject to, is it 19 provisos? Is that the staff recommended?
Yes, 19, I believe, but a couple of those have been, I haven't had a chance to thoroughly review the plans that came in right before the meeting, so.
We looked at all of those. The only one that we cannot comply with is the last one because it's telling us to rotate the building, and it's impossible to rotate the building and actually move it away from Uloa. So I talked to Brennan, and we're gonna come up with something to disguise it with like maybe some ivy or something, and I'm gonna work with the staff to do that. So maybe change that proviso to trying to camouflage.
So we don't have,
providing
we
the
don't
green
have
wall.
proviso number 18, so.
It's listed
can-
as 19, but it seems to be
Yeah.
misnumbered.
Yeah, so to 17, actually 18 provisos with the additional 18th proviso to create a landscape barrier on the Lower Street. And the additional landscaping that you have agreed to add for this project.
Yes, we're happy to comply with every other one.
This project would also need a waiver for the 2-lane frontage, the build to line, the build to line. link.
Okay, so that would be 17 provisos, one
18
modified,
provisos.
18 provisos, proviso 18 edited to be the green screen or landscaped wall condition, and then one waiver. correct?
That's right.
Thank you.
That's correct.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Joshi Gupta, seconded by Commissioner Stewart. Is there any discussion? And if not, we'll call the question. Six yeas and one nay, motion passes. Next up is zoning docket 4123. Commissioner Witry will recuse herself.
Zoning docket 4123 is a request by City Motion number M23105 for a text amendment to Article 18 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance to establish a new overlay district to be named the Browns Dairy Neighborhood Overlay District. The intent of the district is to establish standards for the future use of 44 individual lots that once constituted the site of Browns Dairy. The site occupies most of 2 squares generally bounded by Irado Street, Barone Street, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and Carondelet Street, and is currently zoned MU2 High Intensity Mixed Use District. The interim zoning district will prohibit the legal establishment of new bed and breakfasts, both accessory and principal, hostels, hotels, motels, and commercial and non-commercial short-term rentals. Currently, the site has been developed with several short-term rentals. The intent of the new Browns Dairy Neighborhood Overlay District is to restrict concentrated commercial housing, specifically hospitality uses on the site centrally positioned near large residential neighborhoods. The motion also considers the establishment of the use restriction as an opportunity to increase affordable housing opportunities for long-term residency. While the proposed amendment suggests restrictions on commercial uses that are otherwise permitted in the MU2 high-intensity mixed-use district, this restriction is compatible with the master plan, as the master plan establishes a baseline for which certain commercial uses are and are not consistent with the master plan's land use goals. Based on staff's analysis, staff recommend approval.
Thank you. I have 2 cards. First is Leah LeBlanc.
Hi, my name is Leah LeBlanc. I live on Oak Street. The Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance and Housing NOLA support this measure as another mechanism to stop the attempted proliferation of short-term rentals at the Browns Dairy site. But we hope the city of New Orleans, along with the city council and city planning commission, can get to a place where our zoning decisions are not simply reactionary to ill-intentioned developers. Our land use policy is obviously lacking the foundation to allow for thoughtful and natural infill development without allowing gentrification to grow in neighborhoods like Central City. Foundational pieces like the full implementation of the smart housing mix to require affordable housing and rental and home ownership projects are needed as proactive strategies to prevent wrongdoings from happening in the first place. It shouldn't take a tragedy to kick our policymakers into high gear when it comes to preserving, protecting, and producing more affordable housing. Support this measure, but let's look forward so we can be better prepared and more proactive with our city planning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Zach Smith.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Zach Smith Consulting, 530 South Norman C. Francis. Wanted to say thanks to the council member for kind of doing this the longer route. We've seen the proliferation of IZDs, and similar to the last speaker, a more comprehensive plan for all of this is obviously needed. And these kind of reactionary things are continuing to dig the hole rather than solve. So whenever we do this in the long way, whether it be with potentially prohibitive overlays, it's at least better than 72 hours notice for some of these IZDs. So I applaud that. What I would like to kind of comment on is that we continue to see what we can't build. We keep talking about what we can't build. We keep talking about what we can't do. And we keep saying it's for the allowance for affordable housing, but we keep seeing the sticks and we don't see the carrots. And while I understand there's an easy kind of reaction to say, let's ban short-term rentals, what we're seeing, and I think a lot of folks can get to, is that there is a future, there's a likelihood of a future where short-term rentals will be allowed for small multifamily affordable, for some other things as part of carrots to actually produce affordable housing. And a blanket ban when we know that there's a larger conversation happening citywide on the same thing, I think is potentially going to actually exclude these limited blocks in the future from participating in some of these affordable housing developments, where through a affordable housing project or a small multifamily affordable specifically, they're going to be excluded. So I would generally caution, or at least ask, that there be exceptions specifically to these bans when there's affordability created. Because I think it will, in 20 years from now, you'll see no affordable created on these lots and other stuff naturally infilled. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm sorry, can I ask one question to staff and the commission?
Sure.
If that's okay. Related to the map, I know with some IZDs, typically the zone touches anything, both sides of streets that touch a street that's named. Does this only apply on the inside of this rectangular shape, or does it touch both sides of the street as it surrounds the block?
It's just within the inside of the rectangle.
Wonderful, thank you.
Great, thank you. I have a question for staff. I recall when this development was brought forward to the commission, was the intention for it to be portioned as affordable housing?
So there's the two pieces. There's the multi-story AHPD across the street, which does have an affordable housing component. And then what we saw for this was the subdivision with the street dedication, rededication of that block of Thalia going through the middle. There was no zoning entitlement that they asked for or received that required affordability. So I think there may have been discussions about the potential for affordable units there, but that was never part of any formal ask that they made. And so the underlying zoning, which allows commercial STRs, is what dictated the use of these properties as they came online, and they've been used in that way.
And is this IZD permanent?
Yeah, this is a permanent overlay district, so doesn't have that built-in expiration date as an IZD is. As an IZD would, this will be in effect unless and until it's ever rescinded.
And I'm just curious as to what sort of precedent this might set if we then start to create IZDs in every neighborhood. What is the point of having commercial STR and residential STR regulations?
Yeah, I mean, this is occurring within the context of 4 STR and B related IZDs. And certainly there is not solid ground at the present in terms of what the short-term rental regulations are. And so, yeah, that's a point that's well taken. We as the city need to get to a point where there is stable and somewhat unchanging STR regulations.
I'm with you on that. I feel that it's a Band-Aid type of a situation. We're doing a short-term rental study for commercial and residential. Will this fall under that umbrella? We're all trying to understand.
Yeah,
that.
so the study, existing council motion, which was adopted a few weeks ago,
Right.
looks at commercial STRs. And there is a motion on the council agenda for Thursday that would basically amend the study and reset the timeline and broaden it to touch not only on commercial STRs, but timeshares and other transient lodging types. So the big question of how do we deal with hotels, commercial STRs and the like is gonna become, it will be in front of the commission as a study in the coming months.
I'm just wondering if there's too much of an overlap and I just don't know if, like if too many overlapping districts that we're creating, like a patchwork of overlays.
I mean, there's definitely a patchwork of overlays, and then when too much is too much is a call that you and the council need to
And
make.
all it creates is a lot of staff time and processing time, eventually, I think, creating a streamlined STR regulation is what we're trying to all get at. So
And also enforcement. I mean, this comes up again and again. We're making policy for lack of enforcement. I don't really feel comfortable supporting the motion for a permanent change. If there, I don't know if there would be an option to do something for a year as a stopgap while the commercial STR is flushed out. I feel like when that time comes, we'll hopefully have a final determination. But I am not the motioning person here, so that's just my statement.
I have a question about, what Mr. Smith brought up about, yes, I feel like often affordable housing is thrown in there as just a sort of like greenwashing. Yeah, we're gonna make an attempt to do affordable housing. Really the question goes back to, do we have an idea of how much the small multifamily affordable housing incentive has been used, or that, you know, we considered at one point that to allow, and I think a fourplex, one unit to be a short-term rental, and we voted against recommending that. I think it probably didn't pass the city council either, right? Do you know if if there have been many projects that have been small multifamily affordable?
Yeah, so we don't see that at the staff level because it's something that happens by right. I'm
All right.
positive that Kelly Butler, who's the inclusionary zoning administrator, has that information ready to go. My impression is that it's been used some, but not a lot, which is very not precise, but.
No,
but
no,
we don't have the
I
numbers.
appreciate. I just, my thought is, my comment is that I think it would be utilized, much more likely to be utilized if there were an incentive of having one short-term rental in a multifamily with affordable units. I mean, it just, the practical choice when you're struggling for ways to get affordable housing in the city. So I have that concern about creating this district permanently.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think affordable housing needs to be wrapped in with the whole package of STRs as a whole, so that it's a citywide solution to a problem that we're having, and not just as a block for block or overlay and kind of almost forcing those properties to adhere to affordable housing if it may be relevant or not. So I wonder how we can vote on this today.
Well, this isn't about affordable housing. This is specifically about
Fine.
restricting.
Of course, it.
So, on that topic, you have a motion?
Oh, well, so I move for, recommending denial of zoning docket 4123.
Commissioner Lund made a motion for denial. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? And if not, I'll call the question. Okay, we have no decision, 4 yeas, 2 nays, and 1 recusal. Would you like, legal, they would make another motion, or this would go to city council with no decision, which I don't particularly care for. Yeah. Is there another motion? No?
No, I'm just wondering what we can put on record, about the possibility of amending this for a 1-year, timeline. I think it might be overkill right about now.
Are we allowed to do that?
So, you know, whether this could be converted to an IZD, which would be effective only for a year, I think that's within the scope of
Council.
the motion. Because if you can do something permanent, it seems like you could do the same thing temporarily. But since we haven't had a chance to look into that, maybe advise that as an option the commission would support without formally recommending it. at this point.
Would Commissioner Lund, would you be amenable to modifying the motion to have it for 1 year, similar to a ICD?
Instead of a permanent IZD, a
Mhm.
temporary IZD for 1 year. And that's about how long we think it's gonna be,
For 1 year?
about the length of time for the study.
Did you say we could do that?
It's, seems to be on the table. I think
Yeah.
we would need legal research into whether that would be within the scope of the original motion. So I think you can express that you as a commission are more comfortable with an IZD.
Okay.
Just don't know if it can happen under this instrument or if the council would need to initiate another motion.
So you can amend your motion and then we will vote again. Correct?
You can do that, or you can just say, we're sending this to council with no recommendation. We encourage the council to consider an IZD as a temporary measure instead.
I see.
Will I say that? Okay. Won't be amending my motion, but like to make note that we'd like to put forward recommendation to the council that they consider presenting this as a temporary IZD rather than a permanent IZD for a period of 1 year.
Thank you. So it'll go to council with no decision with the note as stated by Commissioner Lund.
Right.
Thank you. Next is the subdivision ratifications.
And I failed to post those, so this will need to be deferred and we will consider them at the next meeting.
Great. Do we need to make a motion to defer or they just?
Please.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to defer subdivision ratifications until the June 13th meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Steig seconds. I have a motion from Commissioner Jordan and a second by Commissioner Steig for deferral to June 13th. Yeah. We'll vote on machines. Okay, motion to defer passes. That concludes our business for today. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.